No, and this is how live events are. Sometimes also, technical difficulties occur, but we will manage that. So now we are starting with roundtable smart cities, and with me are Mr. Evald KRANJČEVIČ, the Director of Sales of Energy and Solutions at company Petrol, Mr. Vassilis, the Head of EU Public Co-Creation and Ecosystem Outreach at Airbus, and Mr. Florian LENNERT, the Head of Urban Development and Mobility at Neom. So, as Mr. Bergan from Petrol already mentioned earlier, there are no new smart cities without a sustainable solution. And when it comes to sustainability, one of the main challenges of European cities is the adoption of existing cities and infrastructure, especially for the energy consumption point of view. So, Mr. KRANJČEVIČ, how is the company Petrol tackling those challenges, and what are the best practices, especially in the area of circular economy or sustainable reconstruction and adaptation?
Thank you, Daniel, for this question. So we at Petrol, we are aware of the importance of energy efficiency in cities. As we know, city stakeholders are facing few common challenges. Cost management on one side, running the city infrastructure with limited personnel, then ensuring this user-friendly services, and at the end, creating a highly responsive and sustainable city. From our point of view, from our perspective, sustainable city infrastructure is of vital importance in smart cities. So it can be further improved through very different energy efficiency measures and management, of course. And on top of that, we are trying to use as much as possible of renewable energy sources. So when we are talking about city infrastructure, we are giving special emphasis on the buildings, on energy efficient buildings. We know that such buildings are using up to 40% of energy and cost, generally speaking, about 35% of carbon emissions. So our solutions include energy retrofit, PV installations, geothermal energy solutions, heating and cooling, ventilation, smart lighting, and at top of that also sustainable mobility, charging infrastructure, and e-mobility services, vehicles, and so on. So if I mention only a few projects where we tried and to help our customers, so we developed several of them, and most of them also include renewables. Just to mention a few, Mega M, a complete solution for office building renovation, where we implement PV on the roof, and then we use this green electricity for running electricity consumers in the building. So heating, cooling, ventilation, and also charging stations for EV. Another example is sports facility, squash land. So we made a complete energy solution. Solar power plant, geothermal energy, heating, cooling, e-mobility, efficient indoor and outdoor lighting. And we also used old materials, so we recycle the old squash land and use those materials in the new ones. So also very important feature. Agricultural farms. It is very common to use PVs in such applications because we know that on the other side, agricultural farms are very polluting as such. Another case could be comprehensive energy retrofit for public buildings. We have a huge history of successful projects. I'd just like to mention Brežice municipality case when we retrofit approximately 15 public buildings. The case was performed during the pandemic, which is another big achievement for us, and we are proud of that. And of course, in the same time, we are running the biggest project in Petrol history is retrofit of public buildings in Ljubljana, capital city. It is the third such project in a row, so we are developing this through the years. And if I go a little bit on the industrial side, we also have synergies between the industry and local communities. For example, we use waste heat from local steel manufacturing plant and use it to heat up the water in the distributed cities of local city. So the silver line on top of everything is efficient and reliable data management. So for that purpose, we have the solution. We name it Tango. It is an IoT platform, and Tango takes care of smart management and running this infrastructure system. And this is very important at the end, that we also prove our results and that we maintain to be efficient as much as possible through the years, through the life cycle of the project. So,
yes. Thank you, Mr. Evald. Of course, we can talk even more because you have more than 2,000 projects or references in Southeast Europe, and you are the leading company and providing end-to-end, from the solutions that are implemented within the cities to the platform and all in between. And moving forward, to urban air mobility, which is a new way of mobility in cities by using the third dimension. And we are not talking about noisy airports and heliports. So my question goes to Vassilis. So in most cases, cities are, working on this infrastructure. So my question is, how, we can accelerate this process and how we can achieve that?
In fact, thank you, Daniel, for the question. It's not about accelerating, it's more about achieving. As I said during the presentation, we should talk about urban mobility first, and then about urban air mobility. Even the initiative that I'm leading with the European cities, the motto is walk, ride, drive, fly. So the third dimension, it's about the complementary mode. We have to work all together to find out what these complementarities will be, for what purpose. And as Florian mentioned during his presentation, cities shape mobility and mobility shapes cities. So this is what we have to keep in mind. Talking about, where you can put vertiports, it is not only a business opportunity where you could capitalize on the potential roof availability. It's about the design of the mobility fabric, the urban mobility fabric. It is about also complying with the necessary regulations. Even vertiports, they are subject to regulatory constraints. So it does not mean that we can go and use any rooftop because it is convenient. You need to comply with certain regulatory aspects for safety and security. And of course, it has to be part of the wider urban mobility nodes. Then there are some other consequences that will appear if we focus on the vertical part. For example, the energy requirements that you may need there. Are you going to be able to host the infrastructure required, for example, for charging these aircraft or even shopping batteries? Where are you going to store them? It could be some other ones that maybe you have not thought about. Like imagine you are in a big building and of course the rooftop is at the top, so you have to use the elevator. If you have really a busy vertiport, you are going to use the elevator many more times. So this means that even the insurance approach of elevators may change because you're going to have more frequent users. And this can have an impact on many other areas, not only on the actual cost of using, but also on whether actually you can use it or not. So achieving this requires that, as I always say, that many different actors work together from the beginning, that we plan what we want to do and we don't just leave things to happen and then adjust. So being proactive here and to learn from all the lessons we have learned from urban mobility in general. For example, we have learned that we have overused cars, and what cities try to do today is to take cars out of the city. So what are we going to do? Are we going to bring many vehicles on the top of the sky? I think no. So these are the topics that we have to take responsibility, not only as companies, as the wider society, and plan based on the lessons learned and the future that we want to live.
Yes, and we know that European cities are made from the old, historical and protected part, and we are moving cars out, so we are making pedestrians areas wider and wider. But we also have a privilege, to have at today's roundtable Florian, who has another challenge. They are working on greenfield investment, planning it from the scratch. So, Mr. Lennart, during your presentation, you highlighted very well your scale-up approach and how you want to create a global living lab and so on. But I would like to ask you, what are the key priorities for this and next year, for the Neom?
So, of course, Neom is a long-term project, and as you saw in the presentation, we are seeking to really implement both a very comprehensive and integrated, both from an urban development and a mobility perspective and an energy and other infrastructure perspective, but we're also doing it on a greenfield site. So, of course, that did require, over the last 2 years, very intensive and careful planning, which we are currently concluding. We are also already beginning to build out the initial infrastructure that we need. You need to understand we need to build out power, we need to build out water, we need to build out basic initial transport infrastructure that then allows us to actually move into the intensive construction phase. So we are already starting with the implementation of these early infrastructures with the ground preparation. And then the other issue to understand is that we're also simultaneously developing not just one urban development, but actually a whole range of them. So these are all proceeding, and one of the first developments that will be coming online are some of our islands, where we will be opening our first hotel next year, and also then a number of other developments which will come online. The overall timeframe for Neom is a 10-year horizon, with the first 5 years dedicated to building out the core infrastructure and then to complete our urban development.
Yes, and we will come later on also, to the topic of, building ecosystems and partnerships. Also, we are receiving questions from the audience that we will shortly ask all the panelists. And going back to Mr. Evald, so mobility is becoming, autonomous, connected, shared, electric. So electrification is one of the most important topics in Europe. We are now discussing this on daily basis. So this is almost on every board management desk now, this conversation. So there are plenty of, different subventions to support this move to electrification. So as I understood, Petrol has already prepared a strategy. So what is your plan for becoming one of the key players of building ecosystems, infrastructure, and electrification of the mobility? You're on mute.
I'm sorry. So we already talked about how sustainable development is very important for Petrol, and mobility represents an important part of our strategy. So when we are moving to future low carbon society and also a low carbon energy company, partnership with other stakeholders and others that providing such solutions are very, very important for our business communities in this next strategic period. So as a partner for industry, household and public sector, we are undertaking a leading role also in environmental goals and important investment to do that. So we will invest roughly 700 million euros in the next 5 years, but 35% of our investment will be placed in energy transition. So as mentioned, mobility and mobility services are important pillar of Petrol sustainable and innovative business. And when it comes to mobility, we have two segments that I would like to focus on. So the first one is linked to charging infrastructure, and which means setting up, managing, and maintaining the infrastructure for charging electric vehicles, and of course providing a charging service. As you all know, as energy company, we have a lot of petrol stations, and we provide charging infrastructure not only on them but also in the cities as we speak today. And the second segment is a bunch of mobility services, from operating leases to fleet electrification, fleet management services, door-to-door services, and so on and so on. So we would like to, and we'd like to combine all this in one package, and we call this as mobility services for the next generation. So up to 2025, we will invest in around 1,300 new charging points to reach total almost 1,600 charging points in the region, not only Slovenia but in the region. Together with roaming services that we provide, we will provide user-friendly and efficient e-mobility solutions for our customers, not only in Slovenia but also in the region and Europe-wide.
Yes, it's really always impressive hearing from you, the progress that you are making, not only 2,000, more than 2,000 projects, but also you are building a new e-mobility solutions, starting with infrastructure, then fleet management, and also, interesting ways to promote it. But going back to Vassilis, so public acceptance, or how you call it, public embracement, is quite an important topic. So for all these new solutions to be acceptable by citizens and us humans, so we all know about, public acceptance of cybersecurity, of artificial intelligence, of, all these new basically technologies, and urban air mobility as well. So can you share with us some, activities related to public embracement that you are working on, and why they are so important for public acceptance?
Thank you, Daniel. We hear the word public acceptance a lot when it comes to drones, to urban air mobility.
Also autonomous vehicles.
Yes, exactly. When you go from the ground mobility technologies, when they come, the acceptance relates a lot to the technology adoption model. And then the main focus is the user. So how the user will accept it or adapt it based on the usability of this. This could be fine for established markets, established modes of mobility, where you put a new way of a new product with some new features. When we go to the topic of urban air mobility, I think it's a bit more complex because this mode does not exist today. So it's about really understanding if there is the social contract, in fact, in place for having this. This means that here we cannot just focus on the user. We have to focus on the non-users. And in fact, here, users or non-users, in fact, are the citizens of the city. So we have to focus on the citizens, whether they use it or not. And we have to equally take into consideration the requirements of non-users or the citizens who don't want to use, as with the other ones. In aviation and in the more, technology approach, we focus a lot on safety and security. And of course, you can understand these are prerequisites if you ever want to do anything. And then we start to see there is the issue of noise. And we believe that if we address the noise issue, everything is done. However, it is not. Because what about typical principles of sustainable urban mobility, like equality, inclusion, affordability, and so on? So we need to ensure that all of these aspects of the wider society are involved. How do we do this? we use the cities to drive the dialogue. We use the cities to become the actual place where the many different actors, whether it could be ministries or associations, can express their concerns and try to find solutions by having the city officials to drive the discussion. I have mentioned about the manifesto on the multi-level governance of the urban sky. This is an example of this sort of public co-creation where the cities express their concerns, the regulators, the commission listens, and the regulatory framework then is shaped through a bottom-up approach. But at the same time, we need the top-down. And it is this facilitation of dialogues at different layers of governance that need to be facilitated. And this is what we try even to see how to do it. It's not just involving the citizens themselves, of course, this is key, but it's not only that when we talk about public acceptance. That's why we use the term social embracement or societal embracement to indicate that the many different actors, whether public authorities or other public entities and associations, all need to have a voice that has to be considered.
Yes, and as you know, I am also coming from a living lab, which is AV, stands for Autonomous Vehicles Living Lab, and this is exactly what we also do on daily basis. And I can share the difference. So in 2018, we did first testing of autonomous shuttle, and there were no steering wheel. And it was interesting to observe people entering in, and you need to go to the display and touch, the point B, and so on. And we surveyed them before and after, and we saw the results, and it was really amazing. So I'm a big fan of Living Lab, so I really like, the Florian's idea of a global Living Lab. So the question for Florian, how can cities, companies, so today we heard, Vassilis is leading the UAM initiative of European cities. Evald is coming, from company Petrol, they have end-to-end solutions. So how can companies and cities, especially the urban air mobility developers, partner with you and with your lab?
Yes, absolutely. And we're very interested in developing these relationships, these partnerships, these supplier relationships. We are currently moving from the planning stage into the implementation stage. We'd be very happy to discuss specifically with different participants today how they might be able to get involved. And this can, of course, happen on various levels. One is we need to move into the actual build out of the infrastructure, of the bringing together our solar and wind generation with the charging infrastructure, with the smart grids, with the vehicle systems. We also are interested on the AV front to work with a number of suppliers and partners. We're looking at evolving and developing and working together on R&D research. We will be developing a number of innovation hubs, both targeted at startups, but also at larger companies. So there's really a wide portfolio of ways in which we're looking to partner and collaborate. But of course, we also have this incredible opportunity in Neom, in that we have all these wonderful solutions that exist in the world that are often constrained by the legacy environments we're operating in cities. And having worked on this over a few decades in Europe, so often you cannot advance these things, such, for instance, autonomous vehicles within the existing legacy infrastructures. But at the same time, also, often we focus on one single innovation, when really the value of these innovations come together when you connect them. When you connect the vehicles to the smart grid, when you connect it to the right on-demand service architecture. So it's building the ability to have a living lab where everyone can contribute their segment of the solution, but it comes together in a holistic and functioning ecosystem. And that's the great advantage we have in Neom, and that's where we're inviting people to come and join. We have great facilities as well as a regulatory environment for you to come and test. So we're very interested to collaborating with UAM companies that might want to still develop their technology, come and fly, do some piloting here, and equally with autonomous ground surface systems. So really, there's a wide interface there, and I'd be happy to have in the follow-up more specific conversations with people, interested parties.
Yes, and I'm also, see the benefit, when more stakeholders are coming together. And this was also one of the approaches that in Europe we do quite often. So we also have questions from the audience. So Florian, I will just stay with you because you are basically building up the city. So what would be the role of the new mobile networks like 5G? Are you already implementing that, or this is in process? And maybe I can just say for our Living Lab, so we have private 5G network. We have 4G and all others. We also have the private Wi-Fi and lower narrowband. So, but it's more than 60 years of development in our case. So Neom is still progressing, but I would like to hear your view on communications.
Absolutely, absolutely vital, and it's a key sector, infrastructural sector for us to develop, and that's starting from actually having our own deep sea cable backbone internet connection that we're currently laying through the Red Sea. That goes to, and we've already begun implementing 5G here in our existing community. We already have a community of about 1,000 people, which we're already using as a living lab. And then, of course, in the end, being able to provide ubiquitous 5G services across the entire territory of Neom, which, of course, is as big as Belgium. So we are actively building out already the required communications infrastructure, because that is, of course, fundamental to unlock both surface-based autonomous systems, to unlock the UAM and the all kinds of drones applications and the autonomy within that, but also a whole range of city services that we want to integrate, and where we really want to have these self-organizing, interlocking urban infrastructures, and that is absolutely vital to have that in place. So we've already established a partnership with one of the leading suppliers and providers here, and are actually building out a 5G network as we speak.
Okay, great. So Vassilis, just quick question. So this European initiative is not limited only to European cities, but it's wider initiative. So also external cities can basically join these initiatives in a certain way. Is this correct?
Well, I would say in a certain way, the Initiative Cities Community is part of the EU's Smart Cities Marketplace. So by definition, it's about the member states of Europe. So it is supported by the European Commission. But we are collaborating, or we're starting to collaborate with international cities as a way of exchanging experiences between the cities, learning from each other, and effectively creating, I would say, a wider community city-led or region-led on the topic.
Yeah, and I'm also happy, to share with our audience that Ljubljana is also part of this initiative. Absolutely. And that we are working together closely. So, Mr. Evald, the whole idea about this city platform, or the platform Tango, is really appealing, because we see cities are, having some legacy systems. Could this also be a solution for all these future cities? To partner with companies such as Petrol, who has so many years of experience, because what is the most important is the experience coming from implementations. And this is what, incumbents like Petrol can provide. So are you also open, to partner with these future cities or mega cities in the future?
Why not? So our aim is to move forward. As you saw in our strategy, we have really ambitious targets, and perhaps we haven't considered such, let's say, broad introduction on the market so far. But why not in the future? So we are ready. We have the tools. We have the knowledge, as you mentioned. And we should be, and we will be ready to address such challenges.
Well, I'm looking forward to the next City as a Lab Summit 2022 to hear more about the progress. So with that, I would like to conclude this roundtable. I would really like to thank all our panelists and also the keynote speakers for sharing the valuable information. The roundtable was very informative and insightful, and audience, feel free to reach out to our speakers via LinkedIn, social media networks, for future collaboration and partnerships. So thank you, and I'm giving word back to Petrol.
Thank you.